Welcome to SOFREP Radio. I am your host, Rad. I have the total awesome pleasure of having a sit-down chat and interview with Dr. Robert Adams, surgeon, doctor, Navy SEAL, commander, Delta Force, airborne, probably a good swimmer. And we've got, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. And don't forget, author of my wonderful 3 books, including the book on Hell Week, which we're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah, what a great segue right there. So last week I talked with Jake Zwig, who is one of the SEALs, and we were talking about how you're supposed to lean on your instructors. They're going to take care of you to the edge of death. And he's like, they're going to push you. And then all of a sudden we had this Hell Week happen, right? And he's like, they're going to push you to the end and see if you come back from that. And what's your thoughts on what just happened at Buds today with those candidates?
Well, it's unfortunate, obviously, 1 dead and 1 in the hospital. But it's a very, very unusual experience for the SEAL Training Command, as well monitored as it is, to have a death. The first time there was a death during Hell Week, I was actually an Army doctor in Fort Bragg and was brought out through a friend of a friend to look at the death that happened during Hell Week, during the winter Hell Week, by the way. But we were able quickly to determine that was due to the gentleman taking supplements, creatine and ephedrine, bodybuilding supplements that are extremely dangerous in endurance athletics. And he actually ended up coughing up frothy blood, going to congestive heart failure and dying. Well, and my visit at the time, 1-star Admiral Eric Olson, and he looked at me and said, "Hey, Doc, what do I do?" And I said, "You ban all supplements from SEAL training, sir, but that's your call." And a week later, and ever since, all supplements have been banned. You can't go to Mexico to get steroid shots or illegal under-the-counter anything, or it's an immediate dismissal. And the medical community follows everybody very carefully. Now that I've said that, I know these guys were well monitored. I know what a winter Hell Week was, because in my book, 6 Days of Impossible, I describe my and my classmates' winter Hell Week. And it's 6 days, no sleep, soaking wet, freezing cold, shivering uncontrollable the entire time. And people go, "What? That's impossible." I know, that's why my book's called 6 Days of Impossible. But we all survived it. Nobody even came close to dying. We hallucinated. We lost whole periods of our days and weeks. Some people don't remember Hell Week at all, but there were no deaths. And there's
beyond hypothermia, I'd imagine, right?
Well, there is a managed level of hypothermia. Yes, our body temperatures were checked, even with rectal thermometers. Just bless their little hearts. And we noticed that body temperatures got below 90. So we were, running around with core body temperatures 89. You'd get so cold you'd stop shivering. But nowadays, this was some time ago, and nowadays they're much more careful. They know what the hypothermia limits are, how long you can stay in certain degrees of water. So I'm taking a long time to answer your question, and I hope you don't mind, but it's important because
no, please, I'm
people
listening.
think that Hell Week killed these men. And that's unlikely, because it is so well monitored. And there's been a winter Hell Week for multiple classes every year for 30, 40, 50 years. Interestingly, there was a brief period of time when the success rate of people graduating from winter Hell Weeks was so low. And for example, my class had 70 start. We graduated 11. They said, we got to stop having winter Hell Weeks. But they did. They brought them back, and as me and my classmates clearly are an example of, the very best men graduate from winter Hell Week classes.
Right.
But
right.
I'm making a joke.
Like the hardest, yeah.
Well, it is hard. It is one of the harder, but and I was just making a joke for the benefit of many of my SEAL buddies that might be listening. But so if Hell Week didn't kill him, and since his death occurred the day after Hell Week was over, and you got to understand, when Hell Week is over, you eat, you drink, you go to bed, and you start to get your core body temperature to warm back up again. We spent an hour probably in the hot shower, just letting the steam roll around us and try to get the shivering to stop. And then we went to bed, and you wake up every hour or two sweating because your body's confused that there's warm. It doesn't understand your core body temperatures has been so low for so long. But it's a period of rest, recovery. It's a good time. So why would somebody suddenly die? Now, I'm a physician. I know you said, Dr. Bob, command surgeon, Delta Force. Yes, all of that. And also a military physician for
It's a
18
title.
years. And so I've always been fascinated and followed very closely Navy SEAL training and other special operations training, including Delta Force when I was there. And there has to be something else going on, because not just one person died. If it was one person, you could say maybe congenital, maybe it'll show up in the autopsy, but this is two people. And I have an opinion without proof that is based on my great unhappiness with the military chain of command that is forcing COVID shots on everybody without their consent in many cases. And there's been multiple reports of cardiac problems associated with these shots. You have to understand that Hell Week occurs in the 4th week of training, 4th week, which means they've only been in this training area for a month or two. And shots, 2 of them, maybe even a booster, are mandatory currently. So what these two guys had in common were COVID shots.
You think so? You think that is a commonality, right? So if there is
that is the only commonality I can think of.
And they're just pushing themselves to the extremes after they got that, huh? Well,
I mean, everybody got a shot probably because the Navy makes it mandatory. And most, exemptions have been denied across all the services. So when you're in a period of rest, having already survived the hard part, you're a day down. You've been sleeping, you've been eating, you've been resting. And then all of a sudden you die. The only way a young man's going to die is cardiac arrest, congestive heart failure, heart related as a general rule. You're not going to have a stroke. Just these kinds of things don't happen to young people.
So you don't think it could have been like pre-existing conditions that mixed in with it? It's not like they had pre-existing symptoms, right? Like, existed prior to enlistment. Because buds, were they, how long after they were in the Navy already, after they got like all of their inoculations? Like when I was in the Air Force, we went like day 3 and probably got all inoculated. And then the next morning it was PT, right? Straight to PT. Everybody's pushing themselves. A lot of guys were going down with, soreness in the arms and whatnot, right? Because it takes it out of you from those initial inoculations, right?
And you're right. They may have gotten everything at boot camp. I'm just trying to find what is something that two people that are very, very sick in a day of rest might have in common. And that, of course, could be one of them. But it's never happened.
And it is a commonality, right? I can't discredit that at all either.
Yeah, they would have that in common. So it's an interesting question that I have actually ran up through the chain of command, but it's such a sensitive issue that nobody wants to publicly say, well, we're looking into it, because then you got to come up with an answer.
Yeah. And it's a crazy time. Now, can I ask you, I got vaccinated. Are you vaccinated yourself?
I did choose to do the Johnson & Johnson one-shot vaccination because, again, I was required to get it in order to travel to Europe on a river cruise this few months ago. So when you got no choice.
And I also got Johnson & Johnson.
Yeah.
I got the Johnson & Johnson also back in April. And then I got the booster in December. And then I tested positive just about 2 weeks ago, if you will, from my timeline. We're in like January. Had multiple PCR tests in December because I was around exposure. And You know, I didn't have any symptoms. I was asymptomatic. I was waiting every day for the sore throat to kick in, or I would swallow in the morning, or I got mentally jacked up from thinking I had the COVID more than I think I even had the COVID.
Well, it's interesting that the CDC came out last month saying, hey, look, guys, we're really sorry, but our PCR tests can't tell the difference between multiple viral illnesses, including the flu. So when you get a positive COVID PCR test, it could be the flu,
Yeah.
it could be any one of the other viral illnesses. Sorry about that. Should have mentioned that. That could explain why last year not a single flu case was reported worldwide. Oh, really? That's never happened.
Well, yeah, you know, yeah, right. And if you look at the back of Lysol, it does say coronavirus, you know, pre-coronavirus. You know, I'm not trying to come out there and say anything. I'm trying to take the necessary steps that I'm being taught, you know, like, or what the best thing to do is basing it off of, you know, I'm my own president in my own world. That's me, right? I don't have to worry about like what's, you know, that's just me. And I just want to let you know, there's a little technical difficulty with the video, so I hear you just fine, see you just fine. So I'm trying to work that on my end, Bob. But you know, that is interesting to take that into consideration that they both did have.
It's a question, and I'm very much looking forward to the autopsy reports.
That's
But I do want to say this again: Hellweek did not kill these men. Hellweek did not kill these men. You know, because there's been, since, you know, my Hell Week was over 40 years ago, and it was a winter week. Nobody died, and nobody's died since, except for the one I told you with creatine.
Right, you're right.
But no, it just doesn't happen. Hell Week is harder than hell and colder than stink, but it doesn't kill people. So there's another reason, and they'll find it.
Yeah, they'll investigate this thoroughly, because, you know, you have, you know, these young men and women who give their perfect, capable bodies up front.
Yep.
And then get in the military, and they get out, and they're just not the same. One way or another.
And they trust their chain of command to take care of them. And I think in almost all cases, there is a chain of command that's trying to do just that. But sometimes they fail.
Well, you know, nobody's perfect. And if, you know, you're created, you know, in the greater guy's image, nobody's perfect. So all you can do is just strive for perfection. Yeah. You know, I'd say, you know, to segue into an aircraft carrier running into the ground, let me segue into, like, you're airborne, right? That's jumping out of airplanes. You have accomplished that task. I've been thinking, what is a question that I wanted to ask you, and I have a question. So my dad being SF and jumping out of airplanes, he had stories of maybe a bad night drop. Do you have any stories of an airborne drop that maybe went awry, or that you walked away from going, how did I do that, or a buddy didn't?
Oh my God, we don't have enough time for me to answer in all the detail of all the many jumps that have tried to kill me over the years. Because I was static line and free fall in the Navy SEALs, and I was on the Navy parachute team where we jumped, you know, the demonstrations, the smoke jumping off your heels while you fly into the stadiums for the football games. And I had to pull my reserve parachute 3 times in free fall. That you know, nobody wants to have to pull it, but that means your main chute has failed. And all 3 times it was like, oh, shoot, that came out okay. You know, I have a number of Army-related parachute jumps, which Army tends to like to do static line and lets to take the doctors and hook a 60-pound equipment ruck to their bodies.
Rucksack.
So you know, you jump out of the airplane at 1,200 feet, like you're looking down to see if your feet are going to hit the trees when your chute opens. But then when you see you know, as soon as you get open chute, you drop a line attached to your ruck, and it falls down 40 feet below you. And most of my jumps you know, if I were to count, have been night jumps and into the water a lot in the SEAL teams. And if it's dark, you don't know when the ground's going to hit you. And so what you listen to is you listen for your ruck to hit the ground. You hear this, boom. Okay, you stand by, here we go, boom, and you hit the ground. So you got your feet together, you got good body position, you roll. But sometimes you find a tree, sometimes you find a stump, sometimes you find water. Some Navy SEAL friends of mine jumping at night landed in 3 feet of water and drowned underneath their parachute because there wasn't supposed to be water there, and the chute came down on top of them, and that stuff happens.
Right. And there was a drop out here in Utah one night. My dad and his team were being dropped on a night jump, and he said it was about like 800, 900 feet. And the C-130 was at altitude, but it was over a mountain, and it was pitch black, and they didn't know the mountain had the angle going down. So when the guys jumped out, they jumped at altitude, but the chutes were just like cigarette rolling or just hitting it as they broke pelvises, and just, a lot of different feet got broken. These are some hardcore guys that put a lot of their life into that. This was a training jump.
Yeah. Well, you just triggered me on a quick doctor parachuting story. When I was at Delta, we were doing free fall parachuting, and a 45-year-old senior staff sergeant, master sergeant, pulled his free fall parachute at 120 miles an hour, which is, what you're supposed to be when you pull. And he snapped like a whip, like at the end of a whip, felt pain in his hips and was unaware that he just snapped his hip in 2 places, flew his parachute down to a soft landing in front of my medic, but couldn't, felt the pain in his hip immediately and rolled. In a free fall parachute, you should be able to land it standing up easily. Medic ran over and said, "You okay?" And he goes, "Nah, I'm fine, doc. I hurt my hip. Well, let me take you to the clinic. Doc Adams is there waiting for you." "No, let me just go do shoot shakeout, and I'll wander over to the clinic when I'm done." And my medic, against his better judgment, let him do it. So the guy shows up in my clinic about an hour later, limping, and tells me the story. I go, "I think you broke your hip. Let's get an x-ray." And I have one in my clinic. I made a mistake by taking an x-ray up against the wall, which we would do for certain types of x-rays, at chest x-rays mostly, and took a picture of his hip, and it was fine. But I laid him back down, and I did his exam, and I could actually feel his hip bones moving slightly. I went, "I'm going to send you to the emergency room. I still think you broke your hip, even though the x-ray is good." So the guy goes, "No, don't make me do that. Let me go home." And against my better judgment and his years of experience as a jumper and listening to his own body, I said, "Look, really bad idea. It's 5:00, always 5:00, end of the workday. And I know you don't want to do it. I'll let my medic drive you home, and I'll let my medic bring you back in the morning, and I'm going to re-examine him and send you to the emergency room." "Okay, deal." So 15 minutes later, I'm putting on my jacket and walking out the door. My phone rings going, "Doc, he's dead." I went, "Shit." Excuse my French. Are you resuscitating him? He goes, yes. Hang on. I think I have heart rate back again. He had collapsed. I said, "I know exactly what happened. He's busted his pelvis. He's torn that big blood vessel that's in the pubic symphysis, and he's bleeding out into his pelvis." I said, "So call the ambulance," which he did. He said, "Doc, I could hear the ambulance already coming." He says, "I called you after I called the ambulance." I said, "Good." So he, make a long story short, made it to the hospital with the ambulance, where they found his pelvis full of a basketball-sized blood clot, and were able to actually save his life that evening without surgery, because the pelvis tamponades or blocks off the bleed. It doesn't go up into the abdomen, so he didn't bleed to death. And what makes that story so interesting is he actually totally recovered. The hip healed, and the orthopedic doctor sent him home back to Delta Force with the instructions: "Here's some Motrin, take it 3 times a day for pain."
Here's some Motrin.
He does what he's told to do. And about a month after this, he's healed. He's working out in the field. And the same medic looks at him and goes, "You look bad. You're very pale." I said, you feel okay? "Well, I've been pooping black stools for the last 3 days, but, I'm taking the Motrin 3 times a day like they told me to." So what he was doing is bleeding internally from the Motrin. As I heard you laughing, you knew that.
Right.
And bam, we put him in the hospital,
Yeah.
had 3 units of blood transfused. And the reason I add that little bit is about 2 months later, he comes back and says, "Hey, doc, do me a favor and clear me to jump out of airplanes again. I need, doc to clear me up as an up jumper." And I went, "Not on your life, young man. You have 45 years. You'd almost died twice
Oh,
in
yeah.
me." And he looks at me and he goes, "I kind of thought you were going to say that." So, but I had to.
That's one thing that that type of guy does not want, is to have a seizure in his 40s and have to
Oh
be
my,
outed from the military or have broken feet. They want to stay in, I mean,
right?
what he's like, "Please, doc, I know I broke my feet, but I can still shuffle."
Yep. And it's $150 extra a month if you're jumping out of airplanes. I want the money. Okay, I get
Yeah,
it. Won't do it.
it's true. It's true. That's funny you say that. I'm going to tell you, my dad back in the day, he said as a Green Beret, active duty, 24/7, it was $2 and like 13 cents an hour is what he figured. His daily rate was, he's like $2 and 13 cents an hour. I remember him joking around the house. See, I got to grow up inside of an armory that was stationed at a junior high here in Utah. So dad ran the armory, had all of the equipment in there, and I just ran around like, where's all the mock AKs and whatnot, playing around with it. It's crazy.
Yeah, but
Such a good
you
time.
want the money. You want the money. Let's take it. And I'll tell you, this is a
jump
totally
pay.
unrelated comment, but you made me remember. I ended up going to Iraq with the 82nd Airborne Division, and I was the senior flight surgeon there. And I had a number of younger doctors that are flight surgeons that are watching over our aviators, helicopter pilots. And they would come to me periodically and go, "Hey, sir, you need to get me on one of these medevacs because I need to get my flight pay. $150 a month, need pay." And I went, "Well, wait.
Yeah,
Every time I get on a helicopter, they shoot at me. There's tracers going by every time I got to where I was sitting on my helmet." And I thought about it, and I said, "This is dumb. We're in an active war." And I got women, this was a woman that really made me think about it, asking to get on a medevac just to ride it so she could get her flight time and get her $150 a month. And that night I sat down.
She's got bills going on back home.
Well, yeah. And there's a doctor, by the way. She wants the extra 150. But I wrote a letter to the Surgeon General.
Okay. Well, that's a different story.
Yeah. I wrote a letter to the Surgeon General. I said, hey, it was Jim Peake at the time. I said, "Sir, I'm the senior doc in the field here, and I got a problem. I got docs wanting to jump on birds just to get flight pay, and we're getting shot at every time we go out, and I don't have a lot of docs here. You need to waive the requirement of flight time in a war zone."
Right.
And he goes, "Right. I really never thought about that." Very next day, order comes to Surgeon General. Flight hours are waived in a war zone. I did that.
Yeah. So you what a good guy. That's a good thing. You did a good thing right there. You just totally helped everybody. That was a very nice thing for you. Very nice empathy.
Well, common sense when you think about it.
Now check this out. Let's pull off a question that I have on the internet here. Okay, I'm gonna say what it is. It's now right here. So Colton, he says from Instagram, I got a couple from different places. What do you recommend for training both medical and combat shooting? Is there something that you find that for combat shooting, something that you've learned in your training that you can pass on?
Yeah, I've got a little story about that. When I first reported to Delta Force, they issued me a world-class 45 caliber weapon, and they said, go shoot it, sight it in, see how it does. And so I said, all right, I'm going to go down to the range. And one of my medics heard me do that. He said, I'm going to come shoot with you. And so we both went out, and what are we going to shoot? I said, well, let's just shoot a standard 200-point qualification course. And I'd been a SEAL before I was a doctor, so I knew how to shoot. And I was really tickled by the fact that this guy had been through the Delta Force shooters course. And I fired a perfect 200, and he fired a 199. And I looked at him, I went, ha, ha, ha.
Of course.
He goes, all right, Doc, so you can shoot. Now we're shooting at 25 yards, okay? And it's slow fire, and you take your time, and you aim every shot. He goes, let's go up to 7.5 yards and shoot at the same target, by the way, which is about the size of a dessert plate. I go, hell, anybody can hit it from this distance. He goes, no, we're going to do it different. We're going to fire 10 rounds from a holstered position in 5 seconds with a clip change. Oh, okay. So you go first. I don't think I've ever done that before. So I had a little timer. I go beep. He draws his weapon, fires bang, 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 drops clip, reloads, bang, 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 bang. I go, boop. All right, 3.7 seconds. And I'm kind of laughing to myself. You just fired 10 rounds with a clip change in 3.7 seconds. Let me go see if you hit anything. And so the answer to your friend's question is this. I go up there and I look at the target, and there's a 50-cent size hole, all rounds touching. And I look at him, I go, how the heck did you do that? And here is the answer to your friend's question. He looks at me and he goes, Doc, I put a lot of rounds downrange. And that's the bottom line. Learning how to aim, learning, getting the right grip, learning how to trigger squeeze, all of it is relatively easy to learn quickly. But you want to be able to hit what you aim at every time you do it. Put a lot of rounds downrange. You can't learn it in an hour or a day. Delta Force, for example, fires more rounds per year with less than I can't give a number, but it's a very small number of shooters in that group.
Small amount.
They fire more bullets per year than the entire 18,000 man 82nd Airborne Division fires.
Yeah, I believe that.
And guess what? They always hit what they aim at.
Oh, I bet you. They have their lanes just weaving in and out. That's you guys. That's just you guys. That's just you guys.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I got some friends. I'm not going to drop their, they're great dudes, and they're Delta as well. And I've interviewed them in the past, and they chased bin Laden right on his heels, just got stopped in Pakistan, couldn't go any further when he was over there. And they were like smoking teapot, cigarette butts were right there. Did you have any crazy close missions like you were just right there, or you just a little frustration?
No, not really. I'm really proud to say that as a Navy SEAL for 12 years, nobody ever shot at me in anger, and I never shot at them in anger. When I started getting shot at, I was a doctor in the 82nd Airborne Division, or Delta Force, and that was no fun at all. But I can say it was kind of fun on the night that the Delta Force guys pulled Saddam Hussein out of his hole in Iraq. I was walking back from dinner, my phone goes off, and the guy next to me picks it up and goes, "What?" He goes, "Stand by to receive DNA evidence on number 1." We both look at each other and go, "We got Saddam Hussein tonight." It was kind of cool.
Holy, number 1, yeah, right. That's cool. You were over there for that situation. Jeez,
a lot of people don't know.
That's history. Yeah, here at Utah. Yeah, go ahead.
Saddam Hussein was the ace of spades in a deck of cards of 50, and all the bad guys were displayed on a card deck, and the ace of spades was Saddam Hussein. And as they were killing off all the bad guys, they'd mark off these cards on a 50-card deck, and number 1 was one of the last to go.
I have that deck of cards.
Oh,
I have that deck in my office, actually. I do. It's all sealed up. I just thought, I'm a collector, whether it's baseball cards or basketball cards, and I saw those cards. I was like, "You're in my collection forever."
Item there, absolutely, no question about it.
Yeah, no question. And the top card is the ace of spades on the bottom. So in the clear pack, it's Saddam. It is.
Yeah, exactly right. Yes.
Now, Jen asks a question off of Facebook. She says, "What is the most Macgyver item that you had to use that was unauthorized to save someone's life?" That's like you don't have a scalpel. Maybe a toothpick.
Quite honestly, as a doctor, almost anything you use is authorized. If I grab it and I use it, it's authorized.
I guess that's just what's the most unique thing you had to use in a situation? You're like, I got to plug this hole.
I do have an answer to that question. It's a fascinating story, and it's a chapter in my book, 6 Days of Impossible. Navy SEAL. No, it's not really. It's a doctor book I wrote. But there is an event when I'm in Iraq and I get a call at 2 o'clock in the morning that an enemy combatant is en route to my clinic for an ambulance transfer, and he's been shot multiple times in the chest. He's bled most of his blood out, but he's conscious and talking to us, and he shows up in our clinic, and the previous doctors had put a subclavian IV in and put a femoral IV in. Both of them had come out. You know, his arm was amputated and held on by a tourniquet. And, you know, I'm going, how are we going to save this guy? But it's our job as Americans, you know, to save anybody, American or other, once they become a patient. And the problem was, I had a pediatrician with me, and I said, hey, he's lost so much blood, I can't get a vein. You go find a vein. You can put a vein in a baby's scalp, put a vein in this guy. He couldn't do it. And so I'm thinking to myself, what else do I have? And I sent my medic, quick run, get my advanced trauma life support book, put it between his legs, because I'm going to cut down on his ankle, find a vein, and do something I've only trained in animals on, and do a venous cut down. And we did that. We cut his ankle. We found the vein. We threaded an IV in it. We tied it off, turned on the fluids, and it worked. And I went, oh my God, I actually did it on a human being. You know, and I'm a family practice doctor. Surgeon, which you mentioned, is a title, not a professional thing I do for a living. Okay. But that day, I was kind of a surgeon. And by the way, that young pediatrician went on the medevac with him right through the middle of bad guy country, got him to the surgeons, and he lived. He doesn't have his right arm anymore, but he lived.
Yeah, and that's the main part, is that he did. And I'm sure that do you stay in contact with any of these patients that you've had to work with? You know, do any of them ever reach out to you and say, thanks, doc, we love you so much?
You know,
not him. Yeah, no. I mean, like,
not my friend.
I guess that makes sense. Yeah.
That the young captain that did that very heroic middle of the night ambulance transfer through bad guy country did it because it was faster than taking the safer route. And he'll always be my hero. And he was a young 03 captain at the time, and he's just retired as a full bird colonel. So, for the record, Colonel Craig Dobson, thank you for your service to the United States Army Medical Corps.
Yeah, thank you, Colonel Craig Dobson. We'll say that one more time out there.
There you go.
That's awesome. Okay. Now here we go. This is from a young man. I know this one. It's from Instagram. His name is Mark, and he is in the Guard. So he's our Army, wants to go SF, and he says, good habits to implement into my life to set me up for success in my endeavors. Can you give someone like him? And this guy is ripped, right? I mean, he works out all the time. I see his posts, and he's always flexing his back muscles and trying to get his pecs to move all by themselves. So what do you got for someone like that?
Mark, run more. You know, being able to climb up a rope barehanded, or to push, 250 pounds until you injure your shoulder. It's kind of fun in a peacetime setting. But when you go to any of the special operations forces, Navy, SEALs, Delta, it's all about endurance. And that's the key to success. Swim more, run more, get rid of some of that excess bulk, because it doesn't do you any good on a 10-mile run.
Well, there you go, Mark. And I'm just going to say, I think he's a great dude. And he's like, when you see him, it's like, hey, that's who we won. But you're just telling him to just maybe lean up a little more and get into that endurance running marathon. And I'll say again, my dad, growing up watching him, he would run the St. George, Utah Marathon in the desert, endurance running. That's a constant thing. He'd go out and run with a rucksack 6 miles about once or twice a week, in addition to just regular runs that he'd go out on. I'd ride my bike next to him, and he'd have airmen at Hill Air Force Base. You need a ride with his rucksack. And he's like, I'm good.
But he probably,
how he is, he's like, I got this.
Mark probably weighs 220, and at least 20 of it he doesn't need. So,
yeah, I think Mark is 5'5", and I think he comes in as I think he bulks up to try to make up for it.
Yep.
And I think he's
probably on a 5-minute mile, averaging 7 minutes a mile, and he's carrying too much weight around.
Okay, you got that, Mark? I know you're going to
Go,
listen to this on SOFREP.
go
I'm
get it.
stoked for that. Yeah, get it, bro. I want you to be the SF guy you're training for. Let me see. What else do we have here? Have you, oh, that's another question. So again, it's another, have you ever had to improvise a tool in the field? If so, how'd you use it?
Well, that's a relatively common problem. The you don't have the right size needle, you don't have the right type of IV, you don't have the right medications. Tourniquets are really common. Improvised. You grab a stick, you grab some cloth, you wrap it around a leg, and you tighten it down. Tourniquets are probably one of the more common of the improvised, medical emergency devices.
Because it could be torn from something, or just taken off of clothing, or it's a right. It could be a bandana. It could be just something that could tighten a shoelace, right? That would be
bandana and a stick. You got it exactly.
Right. Or you could say, like, if you had to do a tracheotomy on somebody, you could probably use like a pen to put into there to help with the airflow or something. I don't know. I'm not the doctor.
Yeah. Well, they did that on the MASH show. Radar did that on MASH, but we still had to make the cut, and
still have to make the cut.
Pen off. It would work just fine. But as far as personally,
now,
not really.
Yeah. Now, did you play any sports in high school? Were you on the track team or baseball team?
I was a lacrosse player and a wrestler. Interestingly, both of which have been proven to be very good choices for sports if you want to become a Navy SEAL. Don't know why. It's something about both the individual nature of those sports and those and ice hockey is another one that seemed to do very, very well from, being able to push yourself individually and still be part of a team. But I loved lacrosse. Sure. I played lacrosse high school, college, and even after I went to the SEAL teams, I was on club lacrosse.
Sure, you just love. Did you keep wrestling even into the SEALs? Did you ever get into these like little baby fight clubs they'd have in the cultural hall or anything like that?
No,
where they're like, hey, come do some jujitsu.
I was a horrible wrestler. I only won one match in high school, and that was by accident.
You jumped from the top rope, right?
Yeah, I thought he had me
WWE.
pinned, but I had him pinned, and it was fun. So it's all about
awesome.
Sports.
Did you have any like Boy Scout? Were you ever in the Scouts? So I work with the Scouts all the time. There's this troop here that we work with, and the young men are chasing eagles.
Proud to say that I was an Eagle Scout at 14 years old, Order of the Arrow and Brotherhood, God and Country Award, and every other badge and bead I could get. 50-mile hike at Philmont Scout Ranch, 1 mile swim batch. And
you went to Philmont?
Yeah, I loved Philmont.
Sure. We just had Scouts come back from Philmont last year.
Absolutely amazing place for a young man to have some independent opportunities to be on their own and test themselves and
yes,
be chased by bears.
Lead a troop of people, boys become men and like change. Well, they got a Klondike this weekend. They're going to go do the cold weather survival here in the Utah mountains in the Klondike.
Yeah, huge fan of the Scouts. And if there are any young men out there listening, it's also a tremendous preparation for all of the military services.
Yes, it is. And we've got, a really good troop here. And that's good to hear that you put that out there. And I just wanted to hear them, if they listen to this, know that, it's a positive influence. And also, if you're going to enlist and you have that Eagle, it typically gives you an extra stripe on that enlistment. So, it's like, hey, it's an added little value bonus there.
Yep. Take it very seriously, guys.
So you retired from being a physician in 2006. Is that what I understand? Or are you still practicing? Or
you missed a very cool part of this story. I would just made commander in the SEAL teams when I took a scholarship to become an Army doctor and had to start over again as a second lieutenant. So I went from Navy 05 SEAL to Army second lieutenant medical student to go to Wake Forest University on a fully paid ride. Thank you very much, United States Army. And I would have stayed in the Navy, but the Navy offered me a 3-year scholarship and the Army offered a 4. And at that time, at 36 years old, going to medical school, I had 2 kids, and that's
right.
no cheap decision. So I ended up starting all over again, working my way back up at Fort Bragg in multiple assignments to full bird colonel by 2006, and was able to retire and set up private practice in the Raleigh, North Carolina area. But it was a challenge.
That's
01 to 05, back to
what
01,
an amazing,
back to 06.
yeah. I mean, you go, because an 05 is a commander. Is that what I'm
Right?
understanding
Yeah,
for the
exactly.
Navy?
Matter of fact, the only
And
picture I have
I mean,
of me in a commander's uniform was my dress whites with my commander's hat with scrambled eggs on the bill, holding my commissioning certificate in the Army as a 2nd lieutenant, because that was the only time I wore it, was to get
that
sworn into
is,
the Army.
yeah, wow. So you had, and then you started out as a 2nd lieutenant, which is a butter bar or the yellow
Right?
bar, and then you go up to the silver first, and then you got out as a colonel. But if you would have compressed that, you should be Admiral General, sir.
Something like that. Absolutely. I have friends that call
Dude,
me,
sir, dude.
hey,
I love to say that now.
Dr. Commander, Colonel Bob, which one do you want?
You know, and that's awesome. Now, one thing that has been pushed on SOFREP is like, getting outside for mental health. There's always the question, what can we say to somebody that has PTSD or issues that they've always, from dealing with combat stress or just the military in general or life in general, car accidents even, traumatic injuries. I snowboard. Do you have a hobby? Is there something that you choose to do mental health outside, get some oxygen? What do you still do to
I
maintain
think
that?
probably I have the best hobby for mental health that there is. I fish. I fly fish.
Oh yeah.
I salmon fish in Alaska. I lake fish, and that's quiet time in nature's presence is probably the most relaxing hobby anybody could choose.
Yeah, and that's again why I choose snowboarding as well. Even on the lift with my wife, we're just quiet, and you
Yep.
just hear and see the crystals of the snow, and breathe in the cold air, and you're just alive.
Be with nature if you
All these
can.
emotions going through you. Yeah, nature
And
definitely. That is a
there's a number of veterans programs out there for those that are dealing with the stresses of having served in combat, one of which is Outward Bound, that offers free trips into nature for veterans. So if there's any veterans listening going, what? Yep, it's free. Give them a call, Outward Bound.
yeah, Outward Bound. That's awesome. And with Brandon on SOFREP, he's taken veterans, to Chamonix, France, where he took hard charging snowboarders and skiers and took them on an experience of, heli skiing and heliboarding, where, they made a movie about it, and it's called Big Mountain Heroes. And you just see these veterans just, enjoying the outdoorness, nature.
Yep. Outdoors
Yes, sir.
is about as therapeutic as it gets.
Yeah, thrills before pills. I understand that some of those things have places in people's lives, with extreme pain and whatnot, to mitigate that. Do you find that there's also any other remedies out there, like, what about medicinal cannabis? What's your thoughts on that with people? Are you for that? And like, is there a time and place?
So I don't know how to answer it, because I entered the military to go to the Naval Academy at 17 years old, and really never had a chance to try it personally. When I
Oh, I see. Sure.
when I filled out my security set questionnaire, the investigative agent goes, "You sure you want to put that answer down? Because we're going to do a lie detector test." Like everybody's tried it.
He
No,
said zero.
sorry, never did. But I've seen people that have been very, very sick, particularly young people, from the overuse of marijuana. But by the same token, I've seen older folks that have had some tremendous benefits. Some of my cancer patients, that it does help with pain, and it helps being able to sleep, because you can't sleep, you can't heal. Now that there's the gummy everythings, you can get CBD.
Yeah, right. Edible. Yeah.
The edible marijuanas that are becoming more and more legal in more and more states, to the point where very soon it'll be there for everybody. So I can't think of anything really bad, again, with the exception of significant overuse, as I've seen
Right, and abuse of anything
right,
too, right?
of
It's
anything.
true,
Yep.
overuse, 100%. Yeah, except for snowboarding and fly fishing. You can never do too much of those things. That's awesome. You're awesome. So, everywhere you go, do you have a spotlight shining on you because you're so awesome?
No, I'm an old gray-haired guy. I just get what I'm doing done. I will put a plug in here though for something exciting.
Yes, please.
I'm in Mexico right now on what I consider a medical mission of some historical significance. There were 13 men in our SEAL Hell Week winter class that graduated, and there are only 9 of us left alive. And 4 of those 9 are coming here to Mexico to help one of our classmates reverse his dementia. There is a new treatment that is working. I'm watching it happen before my very eyes. And this will be a conversation in a month or 2 from now, where we're going to have a conversation just about this new technology that was developed in India, came to Mexico, and will be in the United States soon. But it's actually proving to be able to reverse dementia.
That's wonderful.
That should make you say, wow.
Yeah, it is. It's a huge thing. Dementia. And would that fall in with also like some Alzheimer's patients as well?
Sir.
Or just as dementia? Okay. So they could be grouped together. Dementia is part of Alzheimer's, huh? Right.
Well, Alzheimer's is one of the dementias, but this is in my classmate's case, it's traumatic brain injury from multiple jumping out of airplanes and banging his head. And he was a commanding officer of a SEAL team in Afghanistan as his last duty. And it's the same thing that football players are getting and rugby players are getting from bang, bang, bang.
CTEs, I think is what it's called. We hear them called CTEs
is another
and whatnot.
one of the causes of dementia. And this company in Mexico here has almost completely reversed international rugby stars with, complete dementia and disability. Brought them back again.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So we'll have a long talk about that in the future.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, use everything you have in your head to do that. You do that. Yeah. My money's on you. If you're the horse in the race, I got all my money on you. So you do the best you can do, because
thank you, Rad.
That's scouting ways. Yes, sir. You know it. Anytime. And I just want to say that we have had some time talking today. And is there any book or anything that you would like to tell me or tell us about? I know you have like 3 books. You want to tell me what those are real quick?
Well, I'll tell you the first one real quick, which is we've already mentioned twice. It's The 6 Days of Impossible, Navy SEAL Hell Week, A Doctor Looks Back. That book is a true story of the 4 men that are down here in Mexico, of the 13 of us that made it through Hell Week, training together. And that was a labor of love, and it's a true story. The other true story I just published last year is called Swords and Saints: A Doctor's Journey. And it's about my 35 years of medicine. It tells that story of doing the Venus cut down in Iraq and then being my time at Delta Force. But it begins as a medical student and a resident and a young doctor. And it kind of walks you through, I delivered babies. I did my own C-sections. It gives you a up close and personal look at what it's like to work as hard as you got to do to become an MD. So for people that want to be doctors, do it.
Yeah. And who can also run and carry a rucksack and do a PLF and have empathy for the enemy wounded. And
all the military
you have
doctors
switches.
can do that. It comes with the job.
You have so many switches that you can control, sir. Like you are able to. The first, second, third, fourth walls don't even exist with you. I just want to let you know. I'm proud of you.
Well, thank you for that. I'm equally proud of all the doctors and men and women I've served with over the years. And I got to say this, almost as a closing comment, Navy SEAL training creates a brotherhood that doesn't exist many other places in the world. And I went through SEAL training 45 years ago, and we all, the surviving 9 members of our class, all know where each other are all here rooted, are all rooting for what we're doing here. And can you imagine being able to put an email out and saying, I need 3 more guys to come to Mexico to help out our classmate reverses dementia, and without hesitation, there's 4 of us, and we're doing it.
Everybody shows up.
That's a brotherhood that is rare as hen's teeth. And I'm quite in awe of having friends at that level.
It's what I would imagine that it is. Myself, just growing up with that family, that community, I wouldn't see it another way. And that's a great closing piece to say right there. And again, I'm really happy to have gotten to interview with you, and I would like to reach out to you more and have you more on the show as maybe even a featured guest. More questions coming in, and we'll just put it out there on SOFREP Radio. And again, Dr. Bob Adams, I'm grateful to have you on the show, and I don't know what else to say. I was just raised by my mom and dad right to say nice things. So thanks a lot for being on the show.
Thank you for taking the time. We'll definitely talk.
You're very welcome, and enjoy Mexico, and many prayers and positive vibes to your friend.
Blessings to you, sir. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. All right. Okay, perfect.